It's going to be a spicy topic.
Uh-oh.
It's called Value4Value is a Scam.
Ooh.
This is from AV Pod, Bitcoin Territory, February 15th, 28 comments, 4,776 sats. Ted, what's going on here?
Well, you can click into the article there on the top.
Yeah.
So this was a fascinating article. I'll tell you, I don't always read every post on the week, but since I'm up here, I read them all, and I was just amazed at, I felt like my mind was blown multiple times reading all these articles. This was one of those cases. Such an interesting topic because so many people in Bitcoin companies or organizations, even if they're not trying to turn a profit, are kind of operating this value for value model, running podcasts, streaming sats, that sort of thing. And the argument of the author here is that it's actually value for value can be detrimental. And I had a quote there that you can scroll down to, but I'll read it out here, which is...
Was it a comment?
No, it's a quote in the original article.
Okay.
But I think it sets up the comments pretty well. In the world of value for value, the system is rigged from the get-go because of dodgy fundamentals based on goodwill. So right there, he's very opinionated, and he follows up later and says, he builds on that assumption and says, value for value has a negative influence on Bitcoin adoption. Because so many people will start under this model, hoping to make a living or at least break even on their hobby project, they'll soon turn sour. And I have seen this in a few cases.
Yeah, explain that to me, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, first of all, he's saying value for value is like a flawed system, right? So that can be debated, right? And then secondly, he says if it is a flawed system, well then people who are come into Bitcoin from a value for value perspective, and they're thinking that they're going to, make it big in Bitcoin because they're adhering to value for value. Well, if value for value doesn't actually work in all cases, or maybe it doesn't work in most cases in terms of giving you a good ROI in your efforts, well then in that case, those people might wrongly attribute Bitcoin to their failure as opposed to the value for value principles. And so this sparked some great conversation. And frankly, I agree with this article. I mean, I wouldn't go so far to call it a scam, right? But I do think that it is, I mean, first of all, value for value is barter, right? That's what it basically is, right? I mean, you're giving money, but it's still kind of a more simple form of economic transaction. And I think it works great in small groups of people. Maybe there's, I contribute to certain newsletters. There's a YouTuber that I support. It's on a niche topic that I don't think is going to really succeed in the market. So I'm subscribing, I'm donating to this person. But maybe that's a bad thing, right? Because maybe this person, if they weren't getting my donation, then they would learn kind of the hard way in the competitive market, and they would more quickly pivot to something that was profitable. So I think there's actually kind of a moral argument embedded in this debate, which is really interesting. And I kind of see from both perspectives. I fall more on the pure hard-nosed capitalist perspective, but at the same time, we all do value for value every day. And I find that Bitcoiners are some of the most generous people I've ever interacted with. Right. So I try to square that off. I agree with the article, yet in practice, I see that value for value is constantly happening.
Yeah, I'm gonna take this from a totally different angle that I don't even think, and this is kind of just my own belief. I think Bitcoiners in general just operate in this new world that doesn't quite exist yet, where it doesn't actually come down to like, the normal everyday fiat things that you would need. It actually comes down to like trust, proof of work, and whether people want to do business with you. And so, and also, do they like you or not, right?
Right, yeah.
Because there's this saying in Bitcoin, like we can just take our Bitcoin and go home, or we can, like people, that's why you see so many forked projects in the space or forked groups or forked whatever, communities, whatever it is, because Bitcoiners will inherently do that all the time. They will just take their Bitcoin and go do their own thing. And that you'll see that all the time in Bitcoiners because of this what Bitcoin does for us. And I think the world will evolve that way too. So I think in a lot of ways, what he's actually talking about here isn't so much the value for value part, because I think that's already a separate thing. I think it's more about this more evolved, I don't want to say species, but this more evolved human that's looking at it from a different perspective. As, let's say you come in, Ted, you're doing this show. I don't know if Keyan's paying you or not. He's probably not paying you.
No.
Is that value for value? Like, what's your value from doing this? To me, I would say you want to do it because you're a fan of the show and you want to talk about Stacker.News stuff, but you could go and do that somewhere else too as well. So it's kind of like one of those things where I'm saying, like, I think because you know Keyan, because you know me, because there's some level of trust there, and because you know you'll have a good time, you want to provide value to the stackers that are watching and listening right now. Mm-hmm. So you're not looking for value back.
Yes, exactly.
But you only will do that because have known me, have known Keyan, have know our proof of work, know who we are. Like, there's all these other things that have come before, and and we're friends. So that's where I think that's where that value for value system doesn't account for, I guess. Am I making sense? I'm probably
You're
not
making perfect sense, but is that value for value, right? Because if that's value for, like, I'm just, down to do this, I'm down to help out. And, I guess you could say that I'm sort of subconsciously expecting something back from the ether in the future.
The future. Okay, so like, maybe you launch Ted News Live, and then you're like, Kark, will you come on, or Keyan, will you come on and host this with me at some point? Let's hypothetically.
Sure, yeah. I mean, obviously that's not an explicit expectation, but you could argue that's sort of...
So would that be then the circle of value for value? I see this is another thing where I'm like, I almost feel like it's just being friends, but maybe in Bitcoin we're supposed to be adversarial to each other, because it is like a grab Bitcoin at all costs kind of mentality. But I don't know.
You'd think we should be, but we're too friendly. I mean, everyone's so generous. It's amazing. It doesn't make sense, but I think there's a really good point. If you flip over the comments here, Aardvark, you scroll maybe halfway down. Aardvark made a really good point. Maybe it was in that thread up there.
Okay, what did he say?
He was replying. Scroll just like 2 comments down. So Keyan was saying, trying to describe kind of the perspective of the article, and Aardvark said, okay, I think I get it. Streamer is, hey guys, if you like it, please donate. That's kind of what I feel like I'm doing. I'm coming around the show, I'm just helping out. No expectation other than maybe a subconscious expectation. And then value for values, I made value, you owe me, right?
Oh, but who perceives that value?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think it's value. If someone puts a lot of work, I don't believe in the labor theory of value.
I got this thing. Okay, so in the early days of Plub Lab, there was this thing where people would say, it was notorious, like, you're going to do something for free. It's value for value, whatever, right? Whether it's a workshop or something. And it's like, what do they get out of it? At the time, it was value for value was a thing. I didn't know anything. Mm-hmm. Now I recognize that was slave labor.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think now I recognize it as like, okay, I only want to do it if they want to do it as well, too. Mm-hmm. Like, if there is some value they'll get out of promoting themselves on Plub Labs, workshops, or whatever. And so it comes from that other mindset of like, streamer, hey guys, if you'd like to please donate, then cool. If not, then that's okay too. But there are people in the space, though, that will get people to do things for free, and they're notorious for that, and they don't pay. So those people do exist, and they will take advantage of what Aardvark says right there, where's value for value. Hey, I made value. Cool. Well, you get to hang out with me, and that's your value. Like, that does exist in the space, and that is a constant thing that you see about certain Bitcoiners and you hear about. But I think for me personally, just seeing it like firsthand and actually being a person on both sides of that, I've recognized that. And so now I'm like at a point now where like, I don't want you to do something for me for free unless I pay you. Yep. Or if you do, just like we both know, hey, you're doing this because you want to help, not because I'm like expecting you to help.
Yeah,
If that makes any sense.
Exactly. I'm not going to be mad at you or Keyan later if I can't get you on my podcast, right, in the future, whatever.
He doesn't have a
you
podcast
won't sub in
yet.
when I'm taking vacation. But yeah, that's I just don't.
It's a weird thing.
It is a weird thing
Because you could even say on Stacker.News, is this value for value on Stacker.News? Like, did they get into that conversation here?
They do.
Where did they say that at?
I think you actually were right there.
Oh, yeah. So Keyan says something, huh?
Yeah, he says he's not comfortable of calling it that label or that meme, right? And, my feeling is that if you are going at, like, let's say you're going into Nostr and you're saying, I'm going to make a career of Nostr and I'm going to get enough zaps to pay myself, you're kind of going into it with a value for value mentality. Maybe it's not explicitly stated, but the zap feature in and of itself is not forcing the value for value like system. It is just a feature, right? It's a great feature. You can tip people. I think tipping people, especially in the content world, for politics or things that they might not normally be getting paid from, that's great. I'm all for it. I think the problem is that sort of expectation when you're like, okay, I'm going to be able to now make a positive ROI just running my territory and getting zaps. That's, some people can pull it off, but it's difficult, right? I think that's the main distinction.
For me, I've told this to Keyan many times, like the territory that Blah pays for is totally donation.
There you go.
It's like, I want to see you continue doing this and I want to support it. So that's why I'm paying for a territory. And it's kind of the same thing, I would think, the way he thinks about, all of you guys. And it's like, no, I want to see Ted become successful. So I want to help Ted get to where he's going to go. Same thing with everybody else in the lab. And I think that's where nothing's expected of you, but, at the same time, like if you are that person, then help them. If you don't want to, then don't help them. And we have people like that too in the lab as well too. So it's one of those things where it's like, I wouldn't call it value for value. I would just call it more of like a community. And there's some people you get along with and you help them. There's some people you don't get along with and you help them. And there's some people that you don't get along with and then you don't help them. Mm-hmm. So it really is just it's a weird time, man. The world's changing.
I mean, think about the group of Bitcoiners, all the people who are around today. Imagine us in like 10, 20, 30 years. Someone's going to have a planet and try to like, hey, look, you have all the uranium deposits. I need to trade you, this half of the moon for the uranium deposits. It's going to be this crazy, this crazy future world. And that's something that I think the value for value kind of encapsulates, but the difference is what you're describing. It's just a community. It's not an expectation. I feel like the value for value meme.
That's what always drove me nuts was like, Austin in its early days, there was a lot of like, oh, you got to do this. You got to do this. And it was just kind of like, you just beat a dictator. And I think at least, since I've been like doing Pleb Lab stuff, I've kind of not done that anymore. Or if I was a part of that, I don't do that anymore. It's like, no, if you want to help out, cool. If not, then I'm going to do it anyway. And but it's not like you owe me something or you owe Pleb Lab something. It's not like that.
Yeah, it could maybe be used.
But you could take advantage of people that do that though, because there are new people always coming into the space every 4 years, and so they want you to do things, and so there's a group of people that expect you to do those things for free, and it's kind of dumb. It doesn't make any sense, and once I realized what it was, I fixed it, and it was just kind of one of those things. I've just kind of done it that way.
Yeah, you can have a one-off arrangement with someone. Hey, I don't know how, but I'll get this back to you later. Mm-hmm. That's fine. One-off, value for value. But the second you appeal to value for value as this thing.
Yeah, like you owe them, I don't want to say who it is, but there was a guy notorious for that in the ecosystem where he'd go around saying this, and then like everybody behind the scenes were like, this guy's driving me nuts because he expects everybody to work for him for free, like we're his slaves. And he was notorious for doing that to people. I won't say who it is, but it got around, and so people didn't want to do anything for him because first he wouldn't help them get to where they wanted to go, and second, like he was just using them as slaves. So it's different when you provide some sort of value back, but it's also complicated because if they don't get that perceived value back, then they feel shafted, I guess.
This is why we invented money in the first place. This is the whole point of money, right? Yeah. We didn't have money.
Yeah. Here recently, there was There was a guy that we had in the lab, and I literally told him, he was here for like a month, and I told him, I was like, well, just so you know, like, you want to do this, like, you want to do this for free, you want to help out, and you want to learn, and in turn, I will also help you out with some other things. And I go, but after a month, I'm going to pay you regardless, or you're going to pay me, and that's how it's going to be. And that's how I handle it these days now, where it's like, I probably won't even like working with you after a month, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And then after that, something's going to change. And that's how I kind of handle it, just to avoid what you're talking about, that disdain or that feeling that you get when you feel like you're getting taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. Right. Humans are a weird species.
We sure are.
And then Justin Shocknet had a really spicy comment. So I'll read that because why not?
Good comment.
True, he says. All it took was one VC linked article about it, and all the virtue signaling lemmings decided it was the ultimate use case for Lightning. How much developer and creator effort was wasted focusing on this as a result? We literally have the most powerful settlement system on Earth in Lightning, and somehow the retards on Nostr determined it was best for tipping. Perhaps it was simply just cope, ? After all, now they could justify signing notes to themselves, calling it innovation, and then collect NGO money for eCash development, ? A neobanker psyop to illustrate Lightning isn't really meant to deal such small amounts, ? Our experiments with Lightning.video showed paywalls to be much more effective than the Value4Value features. Ultimately, content is a digital product. No matter how you decide to price it, maybe if as many people read Nick Szabo as they did Gigi, they'd have understood why it was at best a backseat use case. Dang.
This was amazing. I saw this comment. I was like, oh my God. I linked to the article. So this is his thing on micropayments. And if you, I think I read this a long time ago. You brought this up earlier,
didn't you?
Yeah, a long time ago. But if you scroll down to the bottom, the conclusion kind of summarizes it. Second to last sentence, I think it was, says, yeah, right there. It basically says, you can scroll up. Let's see here.
So, wait, I'm sorry, up here.
Yeah, right there. So last paragraph. We have seen how customer mental transaction costs can derive from at least 3 sources. So I'm going to buy this drink, and it's the price of the drink, but it's also the mental decision making. What's the other ones? Uncertain cash flows. Will I get an ROI on this drink? And, how do I know that this drink is actually full or it's not half full? So all those decision-making, what Szabo's arguing is that that's very burdensome. And in those microtransactions, which people are saying, he's arguing basically against microtransactions here, that they're not accounting for the mental burden, which can be more substantial than the financial burden.
So he's saying that humans are unable to pay in microtransactions because it's so overbearing.
Yeah, I mean,
with decisions.
I don't think he's saying necessarily that it can't happen. It's just more that
there's this mental hurdle that they have to get across.
It's an extra cost, right? So you could see a situation where, like, for example, the pump is when you're filling up your tank of gas. That's basically a microtransaction. Turn it on, streaming cost, right? I can turn it off at any time. But that's kind of one decision, and then I turn it on in full control. I can stop it at any time. It doesn't feel like a big mental burden. He's more arguing for the, you turn on the lights, that's a cost. You plug in your computer, that's a cost. All these little streaming costs add up to lots of different decisions.
Oh, that's interesting. So and that's why we pay a lump sum every month for these different costs.
Yeah, so he actually says that somewhere. He says, maybe it's earlier in the paragraph, he says, you see these web streaming services that are doing a flat rate up front.
Yeah. It's like we've already solved a lot of this tech dribble, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's already been solved for a decade or more. Yeah. That's fascinating.
Szabo's work is amazing. And
that's such an alternative take than what we saw here. That's what I'm saying, Justin, man. Every once in a while, he's always going to come in hard. You got to expect it. That's just who Justin is. If you've never met Justin from Shocknet, he's just like that.
I don't think I've met him.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys. So you just got to take that for what it's worth.
He said something else here that was really.
He'll always give you an alternative take on it, and I think the Nick Szabo one is actually a very interesting take on it because he's right. Like a lot of these problems have been solved already, and maybe it is just a passing fad.
Yeah, is the reason we don't do micropayments because of the payment processing cost, or is it because of the mental burden and people prefer a smaller number? The other point he made here, which was really interesting, just kind of as an offhand point, was, all the retards on NOS are using it for tipping, right?
Okay.
I'm not saying tipping is like not a valid use case, but I do think people are finding these bigger financial like use cases for Bitcoin and Lightning. So for example, like, somehow, I don't understand any of it, but intertwining Bitcoin with a mortgage or using it as like a debt instrument like Michael Saylor, or God knows what else, transferring, insurance or other things like that.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a lot of room for innovation in that domain, but because it's traditional finance, a lot of Bitcoiners maybe just are like me and not even aware of it, right?
Right. I mean, I can see why this made the number one story this week, because it leaves a lot of question marks, and then for some it answers, or they can double down on. I don't know where I land on it, to be honest. I've seen both sides of it. I've also been a person that gives a lot of value in my own different ways, and so I've been on both sides, so I can understand the scam around it. But I think it's an interesting thing, because there's like a digital world, there's the online world, and then real world, and then there's Szabo's world,
and then Value4Value world, way over there.
Yeah, cool.